File your returns today.
Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together.
Kapo, you seem to be in a hurry. Where are you going to?
I'm gonna pay URA visit.
Why would anyone visit URA? Of all places?
To know more about the Kakasa Business Solutions, namely digital tracking solution, the voluntary disclosure program and electronic fiscal receipting, and invoicing solution, which have turned my business around. You know I need to be on top of my game to protect my empire. If you know, you know.
I too need to know what Kapo knows.
Kakasa, be sure you are in charge of your business. Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.
Wait, Abu, tunamaliriza. And what are you doing throwing papers all over the place?
I'm looking for an invoice for a sound system and cables that I received yesterday, but I can't find it.
You know there is a way of keeping all this in one place and available to you as and when you need it.
I really wish there was one, because the way these invoices grow legs and disappear.
I believe this is what you're looking for.
Now how did it get there?
Tabo! Do you know that with EFRIS, you can stay on track of all your business transactions and improve on your record keeping?
How so?
Kati tuli ku computer with EFRIS. I just search using the fiscal document number and I retrieve the records I'm looking for. Bookkeeping becomes simple after that.
Kapo, awesome, yeah.
I began using URA's Kakasa Solutions and now I'm in charge of my business. And you can as well.
Kakasa, be sure you are in charge of your business.
Uganda Revenue Authority. Developing Uganda together.
Uganda is progressing very fast. Negotiating sharp bends at breakneck speed. On the Drift Podcast, we put that growth in perspective.
Yes, welcome yet again to another episode of the Drift Podcast, the show where we get to appreciate exactly what is happening in our country, especially from the economic perspective. Now, I must tell you that I'm usually doing this show with my brother Saleh Kamba, but today I'm going to have to sit in for him. So that means I'm going to have to do this episode alone, but I'm sure that he'll be joining us in the subsequent ones. With me on set is a team of scientists. Yes, in URA we do have scientists because it's that wide, the arena of tax, which is exactly what we are dealing with. And of course we get to hire some scientists, we get to hire some broadcasters, we get to hire everyone from all walks of life. Steve is already in the building and he's not alone. He came in with Justine and I'm going to give them the next couple of minutes to just say hello and they introduce themselves to you, our viewers and listeners, before we dig deep into the issue that they are here to discuss. And that issue is simple. There's a place for science in revenue administration and we are going to appreciate all of that today, Kati Kati. Starting with Steve. Say hello to the viewers.
Hi everyone listening in and watching. I'm glad to be here. My name is Stephen Chigundu and I'm the Acting Manager of Science Investigations.
Thank you so much. That sounds very powerful. We are going to dig a little deeper into it. Of course, Steve, you didn't come alone. You came with Justine. Justine, say hello to the viewers.
Hello everyone. My name is Justine Kesa Kurunziza. I work with the Science Investigations Unit at URA.
Now, straight shooting is what we do on the Drift Podcast, and I'm going to, shoot straight. You introduced yourself as the acting manager, science investigation?
Yeah, definitely.
I caught that right?
Yeah, you did.
What do you do?
I think that's a brilliant question. That's a question we get, I think, from everyone we tell that we are scientists within a revenue administration body. So basically our mandate and what we do aligns with what the tax investigations department does,
okay,
which is to investigate any suspected cases of tax evasion, fraud and serious violation of tax laws with a view to enhance compliance, to a great extent voluntary compliance. So basically our service streams I think could be differentiated into three One, we do technical advisory, where we provide advice on matters of a technical nature. For example, you come in to ask us, okay, someone is bringing in lubricants, how do we treat them? Or the law talks about the treatment of plastics, and it provides for preferential treatment of certain plastics. We have the taxpayer who has these plastics. Please tell us how we treat them. Do they fall within the right kind of plastics that are supposed to be given preferential treatment? So we answer questions of that kind. Number two, we also do what we call input-output analysis, which simply means that we look at people or players within the manufacturing sector. We look at their input, we look at their output, and then we look at their voluntary declarations to the authority, and therefore we can determine whether they are making the right declarations or not. Of course, to some extent, because this is science, it might get a bit more complicated than that. Then number three...
Please allow me to interject you before you even get into number three. You're going to get into number three at some point. But input, output, I just wanted to appreciate that. Is it about the value addition element, or it's much more complex than just that?
I think that's a brilliant question. I'm very glad that you're catching on very fast. So input, output looks at, like you said, value addition. Because when you bring in raw materials, and you want to place them on in the marketplace, you're going to add value to them, like we might see in the preceding discussion.
Sure.
So you add value to them by adding attributes such as color, aroma, and other different things. Or you actually can convert them into usable products that we use in our daily lives. So input output asks the question: are you declaring the right amount or quantities of items that you're putting out in the marketplace, or you're hiding a little bit of those quantities so that you can gain undue advantage in form of unpaid tax?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You can go back to point three that you were
point
closing
now
in on.
Almost lost me. But point three, really, we do provide a service we call disposals, which is sort of a misnomer for a process that we go through to protect the environment. So, for example, someone can bring in goods at customs and they don't meet the right standard, and UNBS will determine that and condemn them. So they'll give out what we call a condemnation certificate. And then URA, because those goods are under our custody at that point, we shall then inform the taxpayer that these goods have to be disposed of in this kind of way, under certain conditions, by a registered person who is registered by NEMA, and therefore that advice that we provide, that inspection and verification that we provide, helps to number one, protect the environment, but also to save up on taxes. So, for example, if I bring in sugar and it doesn't meet the standard that is required for it to be consumed by a human being, we can come in and say, well, while it cannot be consumed by a human being, it is possible that it can be consumed by animals, so you can put it in animal feed. And therefore, the person will pay a reduced amount of tax, but at least there's something that is salvaged. So that's what we call disposals. We also encounter them at domestic tax, where a taxpayer brings in trading stock, and over a period of time, maybe it is expired, or for any other reason, it cannot be used to intended use. So they come in to say, okay, we want to dispose this off, and we go in, inspect, verify, and then we provide a certificate of destruction that speaks to the identity of those items, but also the value. So when that taxpayer is making a declaration or reporting to URA their business affairs, they have to quote that value and nothing more, because if they quote more, the chargeable income goes low, and therefore the tax that they have to pay. So 3 things to note: that we do technical advisory,
that is
one, do input-output analysis,
that is 2,
and also do disposals.
And of course, that has a knock-on effect on the revenue.
Definitely,
that is payable.
It does. It has. I think for me, broadly, it has a knock-on effect on revenue mobilization, because also the things that we do, such as disposals, they have something to do with trade facilitation. Yeah. So you're right.
Thank you so much. You almost had me lost there. For a minute, I felt like I was in a science class. Maybe I am. But we shall see. By the time we are done with this podcast, I'll want to check the temperature of my head, see where it's at. Then I'll know for a fact whether I'm cut out for these things or not.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm primarily a broadcaster. And I want to turn to Justin. You know, Justin has been here the longest.
Definitely.
Like way longer than myself or yourself. And it is only fair that I get to ask her the question that I wanted to ask her from like the beginning of the show. And that question is, when and why did URA go down the scientific path? I mean, it's a revenue collecting entity. What business does it have to do with, with tax?
Thank
science?
you, Solomon.
If you can give us that evolution.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting question. And every time I meet anyone and I tell them I work with URA, the first question is, how? What does a scientist
You're in science? What are you doing there?
In URA, what are you doing? What do you guys do there? Thank you, Steve. You have told them what we do. But actually, science, application of science started right from the inception of URA.
That's something years back.
Yeah, that was 1991, because there was one chemist staff who transitioned from Ministry of Finance as URA was being formed.
Was that you?
No.
Certainly not.
There was some gentleman, may his soul rest in peace, he was called Tindumwebwa Geoffrey. So he came and he was joined with other two scientists. At that time, those scientists were providing or performing a protective role, like helping customs to be able to collect or clear items which are fit and safe for human life as well as for the environment.
Yeah, because customs has the mandate to protect the environment.
So that is where that was coming
Consumers
in.
inclusive.
Yes, and at that time, all these other regulatory agencies were not in place.
So at that time, it was limited to customs.
It was
the science
customs
function.
at that time, but also because these other regulatory agencies were not in place, like National Bureau of Standards for checking the quality of all these items, like National Drug Authority for checking drugs, like Agrochemicals Board, Ministry of Agriculture, all those were not there. So URA was having that broad mandate, and that was being provided by the scientists in URA. So over time, URA recognized the importance of science in revenue administration. And as we moved along, when the Tax Investigations Department was formed, now we got a specialized science unit, which was called Science and Forensics. And it has now been expanded. So we have the forensics section, we have the laboratory services, and we have the applied sciences, which I will not go into what all those people do. Steve has already told you. But the lab provides, it does analysis of all these items that go into the country, and to be able to guide in tariff classification, in evaluation, like if this URA's procure uniforms, we will see is the quality they are giving us the right one. And we actually started in a small container as a lab. You will be told later as you go along. And but now we have really a full-fledged laboratory, state of the art, that can really analyze all these things, and we are able.
I've been there.
Yeah,
I've seen it.
You've seen it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Quite an investment.
Yeah.
And of course, I think we can only have this section expanding even further.
Yeah. So the reason
yes,
it was formed, or why science is applied in revenue administration, you know, science is facts. It's based on these proven principles that are not disputed. So you can really use it, like this principle of the law of conservation of mass, like matter is neither created nor destroyed, but it changes from one form to another.
Matter is like Bruce Lee.
So it just tells you that you can only put this item here, it will go through the process, but ideally whatever goes in will come out, and it has not really changed. You will be able to trace it. And so using that, you are able to really provide a good service that will enable effective revenue mobilization and also be able to improve compliance. So that's why science is applied.
Thank you so much, Justine, for that evolution. Indeed, we are at par. And I know for a fact that the section is evolving and it continues to evolve. And the work is not limited to only what it is able to apply to the revenue administration side, but there's also a very strong arm of research.
Yeah.
The scientists within URA are big on research. And of course, some research has been done by the team here, and I'm going to probe the two of you to speak to the research that has particularly been done in the sectors of wheat milling and the sector of plastics. What does this research reveal, and when was it done? If you can tell us a bit about that research.
Okay, thank you, Solomon. So we usually do what we call proactive cases, or we take initiative to do some form of risk assessment and analysis for the different sectors within the economy. And this time around, we decided, why don't we look at wheat milling and plastics? And this decision, I think, came around the financial year 2019-2020, and it spanned over 2 financial years. I think basically I would speak to the wheat milling, and then Justine can come in for the plastics.
Fair enough.
So the risks we are seeing there were basically under declaration of output. And output, of course, that translates for revenue purposes, really, sort of first order, translates to underreporting of sales, and therefore, evasion of tax. We also thought that, when you go into the milling sector, there are 3 streams of products that come out. So you have wheat flour, which is your typical flour that you use to make chapati, mandazi.
Rolex. You're speaking to me.
And you love Rolex. We also have what we call pollard, and then we have what we call bran, and those 2 can be used to make animal feed.
I'm speaking for my jaja.
Yeah.
Pollard and bran.
So pollard and bran are those components of the wheat grain that you're going to consume as a human being. Or indeed, if you're a normal human being, you could consume them in any case. But so that is the hard stuff. Sort of, that is the hard stuff that is, I think, composed of the outer covering. But
it's not good for the human body.
It's not good for the human body, but also it will give you digestion problems. So you wouldn't want to take it anyway. So those 3 streams are what are the products that they do sell. Now we wanted to come in and say, okay, if you're bringing in 10,000 kilograms of wheat grain, how much?
The one for humans?
No. The whole thing. Look at it like a mango. So the mango has the outer covering, which is the peeling, and it has the flesh, and then it has the seed, right? So
and as a human, I deal with
the flesh,
the fruit.
Ideally, you want to deal with the flesh, but in certain communities, the outer covering also sometimes
some legends, yes.
Yeah, some legends will eat. But the seed, if you ever find a legend who eats it, then maybe you will need to check whether they are actually.
There might be some scientific benefits, but hey.
For medication.
Yeah, maybe for medication, but really, normally you wouldn't consume.
Certainly.
You understand. So your flesh is going to be your wheat flour, and then the seed and maybe the outer covering will be your bran and pollard, and those things you can feed them to the animals. Now, what we saw, if you look at the study, is that the wheat flour, while it's declared as wheat, the same players that were under declaring the volumes that were producing. Remember, when you're doing milling,
we had cases of someone misrepresenting it for pollen or pollard or the other.
That doesn't
arise
between wheat flour and pollard and bran, but it could arise as I'll expound on later.
Sure.
With bran and pollard. So what we've seen with the wheat flour is that the volumes are under declared. And remember, wheat flour is the biggest volume.
It's the cash cow.
It's the cash cow, if you could use that language. And so we went in and we did what we call input-output coefficients, or IUCs, and then we identified the variances, and tax was assessed on that. And then the other arm, you know, when you're on the market, you find that bran is cheaper than Poland, right? So what happens is that while this guy will declare the right volumes, he will misclassify Pollard as bran and then apply a lower price to it. Definitely. I don't know what you mean, but
you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I might understand in another arena. But so what happens is that they underdeclare the sales from Pollard, you know, and we have also identified, because as scientists, you know, Pollard is Pollard. You know the characteristics, and you know the characteristics for bran, and so we assess tax on the variances. That's the second leg of that study. Number 3, we also
essentially they would be able to evade.
Yeah, so essentially they will be using those gymnastics. So I apply a lower price to a higher volume that essentially is supposed to be another product which fetches a higher price, you know. But these things are actually better perceived when you're looking at the numbers. Now, this is a sensitization, but you're going to have our clients, of course, will be, let's say, domestic tax, and maybe sometimes customs. So when we walk you through the numbers, you can actually see that we are losing quite substantial amounts of tax.
Paint us a picture.
So
for demo purposes,
so that the
viewer gets to appreciate
maybe
that this can actually grow into an actual animal.
I'll tell you for a fact. I think we've had a case where there's an assessment, I think, of over maybe 70 billion, but half of that comes from the scientific IOC analysis. Of course, I know there could be a bit of objection and stuff, but that is the magnitude. Of course, there are players who have been more compliant, and you find they're below $1 billion because they've been more compliant and they built their business around compliance. And kudos to them, because it's only patriotic that you actually declare fully what you're churning out, what value you're creating, and then we can get tax from that so that we can develop Uganda together, like the slogan goes. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you've really broken it down for the milling side.
Yeah.
Now, if you can get the same from the plastics, what does the situation look like?
Okay, thank you. For the plastics, actually, when you look at it, it seemingly seems a simple process, but actually it is a little complex, because like in the plastic, basically it's 1 or 2 raw materials. That's what makes it seem like it is simple. But you can find one manufacturer has thousands of products, various products, different sizes, different contents. So that makes it a little complex. And at the same time, while you have only maybe a raw material or 2, but in the process, some manufacturers start from maybe the virgin raw material, which is a resin, as the starting process. Some manufacturers start from preforms. So that gives some complexity. Then you also find that at importation, you are actually declaring the raw materials or anything in weights, but in the process of declaring a finished product, it's either a piece or it's in pieces. So that also gives some areas within the sector which have to be looked at. At the same time, in the normal processing of plastic, there are some, there are some like wastes which come up in the process of manufacturing, but these can also be put back to be recycled as part of the processing. But there, you really need to have a delicate balance between the quality and the input of the item for recycling. Now, that poses a risk or an area which can be used for aggressive tax evasion, because you know there's an amendment in this financial year, and last financial year, and we actually started this section in this financial year. So you find there's an amendment in the excise duty, which changed and made sure that every plastic product pays excise duty. And at the same time, there was an amendment to also encourage people to at least recycle and be able to clean our environment. But it was meaning that people who can use 20% or more. Now, that is an area that can easily be used for aggressive tax avoidance or tax planning. Because one, determining how much is that recycled material that you have put in as you're trying to play that delicate balance between the quality and the product. And then also whether you are actually collecting all these items from the environment and recycling them, or you are doing it the normal way in the process. Because like I said, in the normal manufacturing process, if any waste comes out, you really pick it and put it back in proportions so that it goes on with the process. Now that poses like the risk of if you are a tax planner, you can use that. You can also declare your production by claiming that I really do have a lot of waste. In this process, you lose a lot. But ideally, you have not lost it because in the process, you're going to put it back in the manufacturing. So it takes a scientific analysis to be able to identify all that so that we are not able to lose that tax. So we are still going on with the analysis in that sector, doing research, conducting a lot of other tests, and we will be able to provide a report.
Thank you so much, Justine. And that leads us right into our next question. It's a question I want to field to Steve. And you might have hinted on some of the elements in your prior submission. But for avoidance of doubt, I need to ask this question once more. And the question says, what are the compliance challenges that we have experienced within these two sectors?
Okay, I think you put it rightly. Some of them, I think we hinted on them, but I'll add maybe one or two. One, we are also seeing some form of, I don't want to call it tax avoidance, but now if there's willful, if someone willfully does it, then I think it becomes not even tax avoidance, but tax evasion. So you will find people who are exporting pollard. Pollard is a hot product in Kenya because they do quite a lot more commercial agriculture than we do. And yet they have very limited arable land. So you find that they'll get this feed from other markets and other than that they farm and things of the sort. So they come here and they buy the pollard on the Ugandan market and then they take it to Kenya. Now, the taxpayer or the person who has sold them that pollard then will represent that transaction or that sale as an export. You see, when you export, that supply becomes zero rated. But remember, if you look at section, and I hope I get it right, section 15 of the Income Tax Act that talks about the place of supply, the nature of that transaction, of that supply, is actually, it actually takes place in Uganda. Therefore,
it's not an export.
It's not an export by any means. So if you take it as it should be a supply made in Uganda and VAT should be paid.
It's applicable.
Is applicable on that supply. But now we have people who are tweaking it and saying, and because my invoice will indicate, let's say, Kenya Feeds You Limited, I can easily lie to the auditor or the tax officer that actually this was an export when it was not an export. And woe unto URA, because then they cannot use third-party information to verify that transaction. So that is a sort of non-compliance or even fraud that we're looking at in the sector. The other one is really under declaration of sales, because the business practice is such that these guys do what they call root sales. These guys, I mean these taxpayers, do what they call root sales. Root sales, I'll give my products to a big vehicle, and then they will sell along, let's say, Hoima Road up to maybe Hoima, whatever. Even
from Wakis up to Hoima.
Yeah. So usually they are selling to final consumers. And when we are doing our compliance checks, one of the things we rely on is third-party information. Now, the final consumers, the small guys, the Chimbugwe and Sons Limited that don't file, they're not registered for VAT and...
Chimbugwe might not be a small guy.
I know.
Okay, well, I know Chimbugwe is not a small guy, but there's a Chimbugwe Junior. Maybe you've started a very small, offshoot of your big business. They will not report the sales. So the taxpayer then takes advantage of that gap that we have and underdeclares or even never reports those sales. Now, outrightly, that's tax evasion. And everything rotates around there. Now, when they come when they come to reporting to us, they just lump up the sales. And that actually now takes me to the other point. What we see the business practice is majority of the players in the wheat milling sector are also doing the other form of milling. So they're doing cassava flour, they're also doing maize flour. Now what they do is they just lump up their sales. And if you've done an audit, you want specificity. So if you're doing wheat milling, you want information that really looks at wheat milling. But when you lump up all these things, it somehow complicates the analysis. And I think it's one of the recommendations we make in our report that as we do tax reporting, the requirement should be that the people that, to some extent, let's say horizontally integrated or vertically integrated, they report separately. You will see it in the schedules in the excise duty, when they're reporting for excise duty. Everything is reported separately. That makes compliance checks easier.
I'm persuaded to ask the when is this report coming out question.
So yes, we already have a draft report,
okay,
and our intention is to have it before at the end of the financial year. We're already talking to some of our clients, internal clients, but also we've had conversations with the players within the sector, and we're telling them, look here, this willful tax evasion does not advantage you, because in the short term you might think that I'm being advantaged by not paying this tax. But in the long run, you're going to be disadvantaged if we come in for an investigation and we have to identify the variance, put interest on that, put penalties on that. So that cumulative effect.
And we work it out retrospectively. It can bite.
Well, that I think not only bites but also can lead to the loss of business.
Literally. Thank you so much. My sister Justine, is there something you want to chip in on, or we can dive straight into the next one?
Okay, just something.
Because I have a hot question for you.
Okay, something little on plastic. While we imposed the excise duty, but we also gave some exemptions, and some of those are being
abused.
Yes, so that's also something that we need to look at.
Absolutely. And the question that I have for you, we are about to wrap it up, really, just a few questions to go, is the question of what UR is doing to combat these unethical practices by some of the players in the milling and plastic sectors. Yeah,
URA is going into really using these scientific methods.
Deep science.
Yes, deep science, and like we earlier said, we are very well equipped. We have a fully-fledged laboratory, we have a forensic lab, we have all these staff that are highly skilled, that are able to use these scientific facts to be able to analyze businesses and be able to identify this revenue. We do a lot of research. URA has invested a lot in research, in sophisticated equipment to enable the staff to be able to do this. And like Steve said, we do reports. Now if we analyze all these different sectors, we will do reports, sector reports, and these reports are shared with our operational departments. We follow it up with sensitizations because we are not everywhere, but we train, we sensitize our fellow staff who are in operations so that we are able to analyze 360 whenever we are doing this. Yes, because this input-output ratio can be used as an alternative audit tool. So it will be able to complement so that we are able to identify these revenues which otherwise we may not see. We have had conferences, like I think you heard of the Science Model Conference.
The first in Africa.
Yes, which was organized and it attracted all countries in Africa so that we are able to also share this knowledge, because we cannot protect revenue only here. We have to also be able to share with the rest of our neighbors, so that the whole world develops very well with our input.
Without a doubt. And of course, we can't come here and we don't talk about the numbers. And by the numbers, I'm talking about the revenue contribution, because URA is in the business of mobilizing revenue domestically, and even that one that comes in from abroad. And that gets me to ask Steve the question of what is the contribution of science to revenue administration in Uganda, not just the numbers?
Well, definitely, like you said, it's a numbers game, and I like the way you phrased it, revenue administration. We've had, sometimes someone asks that question and say revenue collection, but I think revenue administration is better. So we have done over 228 cases with the application of science, that is both applied and labs, over the last maybe 5-6 years. 228
cases.
About 228
over
cases.
5 to 6. Yes.
Over 5 to 6 years.
That's quite a volume.
That's quite a volume, and we find what we are seeing after looking at the numbers over time. We see an upward trend of requests that are coming in from our clients, our internal users, but also external users. Currently, we have a case on, and allow me to use the term, anhydrous bioethanol, the treatment from the Ministry of Finance. And they want us to provide advisory on how do we treat this, how do we make sure. They want to put alcohol basically in your car, you know. So that will help us with the fuel prices.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we answer questions like that, and like I said, we handle different things over time. So 228 is a good number, and we are seeing an upsurge in those numbers. So we have to double down. As a section, if you look at the numbers in terms of revenue, maybe close to maybe $29.6 million, and I'm doing that soberly because the exchange rate these days keeps changing as day and night fall. But
I'll call it Akatare Keka. What is that takeaway that you would like every listener to go with? I'll start with you, Steve.
I think it's the assurance that the application of science is objective.
Okay.
It doesn't seek to harm business. It seeks to enhance and level the playing field. It's pro-business, and the instances where there are cases where we had the application of science where the taxpayer comes out and says, I didn't know I was losing this much in terms of, let's say, raw material and things, and they put their house in order. Now, lastly, like I say, you can run, but you cannot hide, and that's with science. If you're compliant, when science comes in, they will see that you're compliant. I can bet you my bottom dollar, if you're not compliant, when science comes in, we are very surely are going to know that you're actually not complying. My call, as we aim to develop this country, is that everyone complies and pays their fair share of tax.
Are you a fan of the Fugees?
I am a 90s baby. 80s, late 80s baby. Yeah.
Clearly,
I know the Fugees. Yeah.
You quoted them in there.
Yeah.
Ready or not.
Ready or not.
You cannot hide,
but
you'll find the guys. So, I mean, it's for the evaders.
Yeah.
It's in their best interest, or whoever is nursing the idea of trying to evade scientifically.
Yeah.
It's best advice is that they forget about that.
Yeah, I think they need to forget about that, because with the tools and the skill set and the information we have at hand, more likely than not, we shall identify where they're trying to dodge.
Without a doubt. Justine, parting shots. The viewers are listening to you and they're watching you.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to encourage our clients, more so like manufacturers actually, to embrace this principle of science in analyzing their businesses. Many times when we have been working with clients, first of all, they first fear you. But as you go on analyzing their businesses, you were able to see losses which they didn't know were happening. They didn't know, so you enlighten them on what is happening in their businesses, and we also sensitize them so that they are also able to use this approach to be able to be compliant, so that we don't have to knock on their doors. They really can use these scientific approaches to analyze their businesses, make proper declarations, and we all together develop our nation.
Yes, our scientist Justine just talked about the science that is used in developing our nation, and science is a beautiful thing because it's factual. There are no gymnastics, there are no lies. It's transparent, and it works for us, that we should all embrace all of this. Now, thank you so much. Usually I host people and I take them for a ride, but for this particular episode, it's been the reverse, man. Like
I think for the first time I put on a cape on a suit, so
you guys have we've taken each other for a ride. You took it down the science path, and I mean, I've taken you down this path. But yes, it's all for the benefit of you, the listener, the taxpayer. And of course, we shall be bringing you more productions of the Drift podcast. And of course, this is the part where I get to salute our production team: Saleh, Paul, Trevor, Omaria, Solomon, and the entire team at the Public and Corporate Affairs Uganda Revenue Authority. From all of us to all of you, adios.
Uganda is progressing very fast. Negotiate.